Welcome back. In the last video, we added the rest of the controls to our view. So in this video, we want to do two things. Number one, we want to get our controls accessible to our code. And number two, we want to make sure we set the appropriate defaults for the different controls. So when the view loads, it's set up properly. So the first thing I want to do is get my controls into my code, and you'll remember those are called outlets. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to make sure we select our view controller, and we want to be able to see the view and the code at the same time. To do that, we're going to go to the assistant editor. And as soon as I do that, you'll see that I can see my view and I can see the code, and right here I see that this is the correct code. It's the add and edit view controller. So what I'm going to do is just make a couple lines here, and I'm going to start making some outlets. We won't be changing the title, we won't be changing any of the labels. So we don't need to make outlets for those things. We're just going to make outlets for the actual controls that the user interacts with. So number one, we'll do this, and I'll call it the title. And it's a UI text field, and it's an outlet. Notice that it is optional, and that's because it only gets created once the view controller comes to life. Again, we'll be talking more about optionals in later videos. The next thing we want to do is the details. So let's go ahead here and call this the details. This one is a UI text view, and let's connect that up. Let's keep going. This one is, we're going to call this the priority, and you'll see that it's a UI segmented control. Let's keep going. We have our has due date switch, so we'll connect that up, and then we have one more outlet, which is going to be our date picker. So I'll just call this due date, and we'll connect that up. Now, since we're here, I might as well build one of my actions. I have a do cancel action, but let's also add one more action down here. And we'll call this the do add action. And instead of an outlet, that's an action. And we'll make it a button, and we'll connect it up. Okay, so I've now set up my outlets, and I have my two actions. The other thing I wanted to do in this video is just set up my defaults. The place I'm going to do this is in view did load. So the first thing I want to do is I want to set the default priority to normal. So I'm going to say here self dot the priority dot segmented index is equal to number 1. I also want to, by default, have no due date. So I'm going to say self dot as due date dot is on is equal to false. Since there's no due date, we want to make sure the due date itself is not enabled. So we're going to say self dot due date dot is enabled equals false. So there we go. We have all of our outlets. We have our two actions for our buttons, and we've done a little bit of defaults. So let's run that and see how that looks. Okay, we got a build success. That's great. So here we have our phone. And we'll just wait for it to boot up. Shouldn't take more than a second or so. And if I click add, we'll see that the priority is normal, the due date is off, and this is disabled. But notice one thing, we're still missing the border on the details. So I'll set that border up in our next video. Alright, so we'll see you in the next video. Thank you very much.